extraordinaire, the Gemologist.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. Thank you for joining me today. So today I will resolve the birthday dilemma, and that's kind of inspired by a couple calls. We will hear these calls from Amy Lee Rodriguez, the producer and my wife, and then from Jason Connerly. And I don't think they talked to each other beforehand, but the suggestion is pretty similar. So I have made a decision, and I will share that decision with you after the call-ins. After that, then I have a special guest on to talk about running for big groups, and that is BJ Boyd of the Arcane Alienist. This segment is inspired by his most recent Arcane Alienist podcast, The Fall of the Veiled Society and Rethinking Goblins. He's going to have another episode out soon where I fielded and talked to him about some questions, but I thought, well, hey, maybe I'll kind of talk to him about big groups because I was, like I said, inspired by his retelling of the Fall of the Veiled Society that he ran for his son and friends. So yeah, so pretty cool stuff, and on with the show.
If you can't tell, I am stealing a moment to myself while out of town to let you know that my personal vote for your birthday game would be the Ducks. Because if you always leave something a little bit open, why not throw the Ducks in there? Start with the first one that you want to do and go forward. You could even make it a revolving birthday game. Kind of like your Twilight 2000, which, by the way, on your birthday starts the 4th year, but there's always so much more to do with the Free Krakow Coalition. They're always getting into something, and plus, we have some that want to travel home. I know Katya wants to go to Russia, see if she can't find the one that killed her parents, and either, I don't know, confront him or kill him. I don't know. What is the dilemma there? Don't know. She's not much into killing. So probably just sticking to the way she normally goes, which is befriending them. She does have a tendency to collect strays. But anyways, looking forward to my birthday game. Go Ponies. You know, friendships are magic. And I've never watched The Little Ponies, to be very honest. I've just always thought they were cute. Anyways, and for those of our listeners that don't know, Amazing Ninja Dude, you can go on Untapped and look up his handle. Anyways, have a great one. See you soon.
Hey, Carl, Jason here. You know, calling yourself a ninja isn't too far from the truth. You did play a ninja in my Ninja City game, so I appreciate that. As far as the birthday game, yeah, I think you need to do what calls you, although I'll throw another option out there. For riffs, though, I would say just do Savage Riffs. You're familiar with it. It goes quick. People understand Savage Worlds. I think that's probably makes the most sense. But let me throw another option out there. We've talked about the Duck Campaign, the Great Duck Campaign, over the years. A birthday game may be the time to do it. Maybe once a year you run one game in the Great Duck Campaign because, you know, people are more likely to join the birthday game out of guilt. Like, it's his birthday game, I've got to play. So maybe you could get those players that wouldn't play Ducks otherwise into the Great Duck Campaign if that became your birthday theme. Just a thought.
How very uncanny. I think I've made my decision. But first, let's talk about what other things that they spoke of. That is kind of cool. Thank you, Amy and Jason, for those calls. I have decided against Savage World Riffs. I'm going to hold that for something else. And maybe it'll give Jason an opportunity to help me out. When we play test it, I might do something as a con game that I have in mind. But, and then with regards to Amy, what she mentioned, yes, we're going to play, well, not really ponies, but like I mentioned before, a mix of My Little Pony, Power Rangers, Transformers, and G.I. Joe from Renegade Games. They put out a free RPG day adventure with all 4 of their properties in one big bang up mashup thing. So we'll see how that goes. That'll probably be, I don't know if it'll be actually the Friday the 2nd or Saturday the 3rd, but we will see. And then after that, and then Amy mentioned Twilight 2000. We have played that somewhat, and things have moved along in Krakow. It's very interesting, the developments. It seems that now that the Free Krakow Coalition is back, they're cleaning Krakow up. They've joined and allied with someone who they thought would be their enemy, but might be an erstwhile ally, and that is the General of the Ormo. And they are getting rid of the let's say, negative influences in Krakow that prevent its development and prevent its citizens from improving their lives, at least according to Kasha and the Free Krakow Coalition and her cohorts. So a fantastic set of operations to get rid of some of these negative influences in Krakow that Rupert started and found about from a random encounter, and then that Amy followed up upon. And we'll see how things shake up. It should be pretty cool. I'll have to dedicate a separate podcast to that and what's gone on there. And of course, you can watch that on our YouTube. It's ongoing, but I think we're quite behind YouTube wise. I think we put them out like every other week. So yeah. So what am I going to play? So there's this thing called the Mighty Duck campaign. Not Mighty Duck. Well, it's actually called the Rise and Fall of Ducks from the Beginning to the End of Time. But I think I've thought more interestingly about it, and I might make it such that there is this space-time continuum. Ducks will be a theme for sure, but it's going to be a multi-time, multi-game spanning epic tale that is going to be related. And I take inspiration because I've seen someone do this, I feel like, on the forum somewhere. And last year, Kevin Madison kind of did it for his charity games, where these games were all intertwined, but different systems, different time periods. But here, we're going to have different time periods, and ducks will be incorporated somehow. So I think what I'm starting out with, I'm going to run a game of the Marvel Multiverse RPG that has just come out, and that is by where is it? Here it is. Yes, Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, and it is by Matt Forbeck. And we've run it on the channel before. We've run some of our 50 State Initiative, Avengers 50 State Initiative. We've done character creation. We've even run like one session of the Cataclysm of Kang, which I will get back to, or we will get back to at some point. But here, we're going to run a Marvel Multiverse game starring Howard the Duck. And I'm going to have the other heroes involved in Howard the Duck's little escapade be other anthropomorphic heroes. And who I've settled on, well, I'll amend that, not just anthropomorphic, but also some animal heroes, or ones that are associated, or anyway. So Howard the Duck, like I said, I'm going to have Cosmo show up, Rocket, Hambit, and Throg. And if I get another player, I got Spider-Ham. So we'll see how many join and how many go. I think I might have a full table, but it depends on people's work schedule and the like. But the start is going to be pretty cool, I think. If you can imagine, in Guardians of the Galaxy, or in one of the Marvel, no, it wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think the Guardians were incorporated into it in that saga. But there is a scene where on Nowhere, the Howard the Duck and Cosmo are sort of imprisoned or on display by the Collector. So I'm going to have sort of Rocket suddenly appear, and other things there, and that's going to be the initial engagement, initial fight. Then likely they'll be transported elsewhere where other shenanigans will ensue. And then finally, I can hopefully, if it works out, conclude where it leads in potentially, or at least previews, hints at one of the next games in the Duck Saga. I think I will call it. I'll call it the Multiverse of Ducks, the Duck Multiverse, or that one time when Howard the Duck, I don't know what I'm going to call it. But anyway, I think it should be pretty cool. I actually have the big bad villain in mind. I won't say anything about that here, but maybe I will give hints, or maybe there'll be hints in the game. But it should be a pretty neat. So yeah, that's what's going to happen, and I hope it goes well. I've made all the characters actually at this point. I've set up the locations. I got the first fight ready to go. For the second fight, it just depends on what the characters do. So it's going to be like fight, investigation, fight, fight, and then hopefully that's how it'll go. But we'll see, because you know how players are. But anyway, I'm excited about it, and thank you, Amy and Jason, for reminding me of the rise and fall of ducks from the beginning to the end of time. Well, BJ, it's great to have you on as a special guest here on the GMologist Presents. And I just wanted, I was really impressed by your narrative and retelling of the Veiled Society and your group and your continued play with such a large group. And it reminded me that it's challenging to run a big group. And I just wanted to, you may have said this before in your podcast, but just really quickly, what works, what doesn't, how does it work? Do you do certain things you think in the group that it makes it conducive to a smooth play? Because you got through, I say the Veiled Society, when you got through it, right? They didn't lose interest. They kept going, and it's not a long adventure, but it's kind of involved. It's like a mystery. There's some intrigue, and it seems like you came to a satisfying conclusion with it, with a lot of different things going on, right? So I think that's cool. I mean, for me, I think the biggest group I've had in recent memory, I might have had a larger group at some point, was actually at North Texas RPG Con for my Hyperborea game. I was expecting 4 or 5, and then people trickled in, so then it ended up being like seven people, which to me is a pretty large group.
Yeah, it is.
It's a large group, but it ran really smoothly. We had some people that I didn't know who they were at the time, but then I realized later that they're kind of cool. Not cool. Everyone at North Texas RPG Con is cool, but they were involved in the creation of some of the Hyperborea stuff. So I thought that was kind of neat. And then we were able to see, and I looked smooth to me when Jeff Talanian and the author of Hyperborea was running like 11 people. Was it 11 people?
11 or 12 people at the table, yeah.
But I thought that was pretty neat. How he was kind of working it, and it seemed to go pretty smooth. I mean, I guess it is, maybe convention's different, right? Because you pay to go there. This is someone in our little niche that you respect and is important, so you're going to give them your undivided attention. So maybe it's a little different. But I thought both games, as I observed and played and then ran, went really smoothly.
Yeah, well, I think knowledge of the rules makes things work very smoothly. So, obviously I would expect Jeff to be able to run a bigger group at Hyperborea than most people, because those are his rules. He knows them inside and out. So he doesn't need to stop and flip and turn and look things up. He just kind of knows how to do it and make it go. And the flip side of that is, if you're running Hyperborea or any system, and everybody who's playing has kind of learned the rules then it does go smoothly. And I
Mhm.
think even very, or I wouldn't say overly complex rule systems can do that if you've got people who know their characters and they know the rules and they get into a rhythm. I think
Right, right.
barring that though, like with new players, you really need either people who are the type of people who learn very quickly, or I think it works better with simpler rule sets. I think part of why, my son said, "Can you run D&D for some of my friends?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What how many of them?" And when it was three or four of them, I'm like going, "Okay, well, he's played 5e, and that's kind of what the kids are into, so we'll just go with 5e." Um, but then the more of them started saying they wanted to be a part of it, I'm like, "I look, kid, we can't do this with 5e. We could do it with if everybody already knew the game, this would be great. We probably could make it happen, even though, but I still think 5e, once you get past, six players, it gets really challenging. I've ran it with 7 or 8 people before, and it's not that things just slow down because it's just there are more decisions to make. So I said, why don't we try old school style D&D? And that's what we went with. Is I kind of went with is if anybody's listened to my show knows, it's sort of a blend of Knave and old school essentials that's meant to make it go, and that's once they kind of learned, oh, I've got a couple of things that my character can do, and that's all I got to track. Things went really smell because it went really smoothly because then everything's procedural after that. We have the order of operations in combat and the order of operations for surprise or for moving through the dungeon by turns, and that really just the procedures are your friend when you're running for a big group as well.
Right, right. And I remember like back in college running for like large groups, like 7, 8 people. Like I had this long-standing campaign, and again it was like AD&D, which we had played since like, high school, and we were now in college. And then, we would get all we I was running like sort of like a I don't know if it was like we didn't call it West Marches, but it was like, all right, who can play? Who wants to play? And then some people would be like, so we play the Forgotten Realms. Some people would be in Waterdeep. Some people would be up in the north in that area. And then a couple times we're like, oh, we got this big thing. Everyone converges in Waterdeep and we run this big thing, right? Or everyone converges in the north and run this big thing. And that was with, 8, 9 people, all the people that
Yeah.
played instead of like little 3 or 4 person groups, right? They all got together, all the different, brothers who would play together got with the other group that would play together, and it was pretty neat. But again, I think because we knew the system so well, to your point, and it has a definite, side initiative, very easy. Okay, and we all knew the rules, and everyone knew their character, how the spells work. We really didn't have to look stuff up because we've been playing for, six,
Yeah.
7 years, right? So yeah, I think that's extremely helpful in running, a big group like that. And I think there's some group, but I was going back to North Texas for example. Um, what about like that one game we played, Wet Wired? There are some new people there,
Yeah.
and they picked it up really well because it's a very simple system. You think that could work with a
Yeah,
big group?
I think when you use a simple system that's intuitive and you know, I think that's one of the strengths of when you've got a unified mechanic. I know not everybody likes games with unified mechanics, but that is one advantage of a unified mechanic is look, whatever you're doing, you're going to be, you know, rolling a 20-sided die and trying to get the highest number, hope for the highest number possible. Once you get that, everything else kind of falls into place. Um, or whether even if it's roll under, you're rolling this and trying to roll under the score for whatever skill or ability, whatever the mechanic is, as long as it's like, okay, I got the concept after a couple of tries. Now it's just a matter of which skill, which ability, which tool or weapon am I using. Um, I think that works really well.
Yeah, and a system that like I feel like I can run, pretty easily Call of Cthulhu. So I was pretty comfortable with the group of, I think I had 6 at ChupacabraCon, and I think that was fine. I
And
mean,
Call of Cthulhu is really an intuitive system once you understand percentiles that you're rolling under
yeah,
your score because to roll
and
over.
and there's some nuance in the new version, right? In the new version, there's like, well, you can, like say if you're especially in combat, there's more options. There's the bonus dice or penalty dice type of system, and
Hmm.
then there's also like dodging. Are you going to dodge? Are you going to counterattack? What are you going to do? And then who wins
Yeah.
that roll off, right? So I think I know that I don't have to look things up. I can like, okay, we'll make a ruling or go, with that. And more and more I mean, I don't know, Warhammer, though we know it really well, I think there's so much new complexity. And same thing with Modifius 2D20. While I know that system really well, and I could run an adventure, I think with the larger group, because of this the idea of like how are you going to use your meta currency, and there's like a game within a game there that definitely like
When
slows things
it's a
down.
group resource, so you kind of have to, everybody has to kind of agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that too, right?
go ahead and use some momentum. Or
Right. So that game works well, I think, with 2 to 4 people. Right. The cool thing about a game like that one and Savage Worlds is that you can run it with like a buddy cop game, right?
yeah,
Or a sidekick in a hero game. The 2D20 like that, like Octung or Savage Worlds, you could do that. But I think with a large group, because there are many decisions to be made during the course of the game. And then I think with Savage Worlds, then you have like, okay, well, what happens after this step and what happens after this step, and the procedures get a little, they're not as cut and dry as move, missile, magic, melee, or whatever, or however you do
yeah.
it. So or in
Took
Hyperborea
me
the other way around.
it took me a long time when I came back from modern gaming into kind of old school to get back to where I appreciated what that is, because it is somewhat arbitrary whether you do melee. People talk about it's about game balance. I can't find an objective reason why, but because it's predictable, it's easy to move through the sequence really quick.
Right, right.
It's really not so much what the procedure is, that there is a procedure and everybody knows what it is and can follow it.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I guess it really is, in a way, this is something that's interesting that I think about, and we do, and I do like the Hyperborea mode of operation too, because it does make sense if you're in a group combat and there's some people already in melee, they're probably going to be going first before the other stuff. They're going to interact before the other stuff, so that makes sense. But I know like for in contrast to say like in Warhammer Fantasy, if the you see the enemy at X yards, right? Then I usually like, and if people have tied in their initiative because it's individual initiative, then I let the people who have the missile go first, because that makes more sense, right?
yeah,
You're not gonna run in front of someone shooting a bow behind you, right? You're gonna let them shoot and follow that arrow towards the target.
yeah.
So I think you can use some common sense too to make sense of it, or whatever. Or
Well,
in AD&D, that seemed to be, when we played, that seemed to be how it, really, except for spell casting and segments in the first round, but it never seemed to come up really, the segment thing. Because when there was a question of it, it was like I rolled a 1 and you guys rolled a 6. So
yeah, yeah.
so but it's the same thing. It's like, there's no, in AD&D there's not really a procedure, but
Well, there's a
there's a logic
boon.
to the
Yeah,
operation.
in AD&D,
Right.
there's a I don't know if it's a simulationist is to be accurate, but it's kind of a gimme to the people using ranged weapon to let missile go first, because after the first couple rounds of combat, you're
Yeah.
you're gonna shit you're risking hitting your friends, so you got to switch
Right.
tactics.
Right.
I played in a second edition AD&D game where they changed the rules a little bit, where weapon speed is an optional rule that modifies your initiative roll,
Right.
but it's still individual initiative. It's not like AD&D where you only apply it if two people are tied and they're kind of squared off with one another.
Right.
It gives you kind of the precursor to our modern individual initiative. Well, the weapon speed on bows is terrible. And so I was playing an archer, and if I didn't get a shot off, if we didn't encounter somebody at a far enough distance for me to get a few shots off, the fighters just ran ahead, and then I was like, well, See you guys later.
Yeah, you have to have that +3 or that bow of speed or that
Yeah,
dex of 18 and a +3 bow and a bow of
yeah,
speed or crossbow speed or whatever
yeah,
to get that first shot off at a lot of times, right?
yeah.
And
Because
then, but then of course at that level, then your fighter has a sword +3.
yeah, and that was what was going on. Is
Just
even
how
in,
fast can you
I
run?
I would have been happy if I could have got a couple of shots off and then maybe switched to because I was playing a thief if I and
Yep.
then switch to a hand weapon and try to get in and find a backstab or
Hmm.
find some other way to help. But I was a fighter thief, so I also archery was kind of my specialty as a fighter, and it was like very rare that even in the first round I would get to go and get a shot off before everybody else closed for melee.
Hmm.
And just because the speed of the weapon speed of the bow always had me going last in the initiative order.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. But I think that's a thing too. If you're, I guess this is maybe the third point. So one, a pretty intuitive rule set. Two, people at the table know the rules, and or it's a simple system, they can pick it up. And I think three is like you play together for a long time is another key to
yeah,
like having a big group, right? Because then you're gonna let the dwarf, toss his grenade before you charge into melee type of thing.
yeah,
So right, that kind of happened in one of my Warhammer games recently. So
yeah,
yeah, so you kind of understand, and then in the games where, so like a Modifius game, um, or a game where like yeah, this side goes or that side goes, and you can decide, then the group is pretty easy, it quickly can make that decision too, right?
yeah.
Or if there's a tie, or if there's like side initiative. Well, I know you're laughing, so maybe that's not quite true.
No,
Is
I
that a
was just thinking of
slowdown in your game?
no, I was just thinking of back when I switched from 5e to old school. So, and these are all veteran players, but we had gotten so used to playing third, fourth, fifth edition style D&D
Hmm.
that we lost characters because one, even though we were doing side initiative, there was still this sort of between okay, everybody on the other side, if they win initiative, gets to go. Also, you don't have very many hit points or very good armor.
Yeah,
There's this sort of invulnerability of modern D&D and Pathfinder characters that they can kind of spread out on the battlefield and survive and oftentimes win.
yeah,
Whereas in old school D&D or AD&D, you need to stay together in formation to protect each other. Um, or, the enemy's just going to, if you spread out, they're just going to, everybody charge the mage.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that's what I've been going through my back catalog. I'm thinking about changing some of my, changing over to YouTube and going to put my back ones up. And I came across one of the early episodes after we had switched, talking about how it was just a handful of hobgoblins against an entire party, and they got, they lost two people and had to go back to town. They couldn't even get in the front door of the cave because there's the hobgoblins and Caves of Chaos because they kind of spread out, and then you got hobgoblins posted
Yeah, yeah.
at the entries with bows, and they just picked them off
Pick
because
you off.
they won initiative, and you weren't
Yeah, that is
these
really
weren't hiding
something that
behind
is
the
interesting, right? Is
fighters,
it can
right?
go south really quickly
Yeah.
if you lose initiative. So
Um,
yeah, right. So like I saw just as an example in our recent Hyperborea game, it just reminds me of something about how important side initiative and winning it is because it can be very swingy. So when you're fighting the Ixians, I was like, oh man, if they win initiative, those Vormis, which are like bugbears, so like 3 hit dice creatures against first level or so characters, are just going to run up there and maul you. But you guys consistently won initiative, and that was key. Being
yeah.
able to get ahead of that tactically and pick those guys off, recognizing who the and
Well, we did what the hobgoblins did to my OSE guys is we stayed together. We let them spread out. We ambushed them at the right time. We used
yeah,
the terrain to our advantage to
yeah, yeah.
keep them from surrounding us or ganging up.
So now, how do you run a big last piece of bit of advice from BJ Boyd, the Arcane Alienist? How do you run a big group?
How do you run a big? Well, one, I think you have to have some expectations. In a big group, things are going to take longer, so don't expect it to go as quickly. Um, because it's a bigger group, everything's just going to take longer, even if everybody is on point and firing on cylinders. But because it's a big group, you are naturally going to get a couple people kind of having side conversation. It's easier because you're spread out even around a table, even if you're all in the same room together. So just don't get too uptight about those things unless they're just completely derailing the game, and being upfront with people about that.
So you don't have like you can they're on their phones and stuff like that. You don't go, oh, no phones at the table or anything like
If,
that.
if it got to be the point that nobody's paying attention, I would probably say no, no phones at the table. It hasn't been an issue. And again, these are all high school kids. They're still in that phase where their characters have stupid names that are double entendres, and they're not playing serious high drama. Um, so one of them's his name is Poopy Pants. One of them's name is
Well, at least it's not a Varger and Traveler named Scooby Doo.
yeah. I'm sure if we had dog people in this game, that would have been, we would have had something like that. But so just have some tolerance from that. That's true when I've run larger groups of adults as well. You just have to be ready for that. The other thing is keep it moving. Like find a rhythm, regardless of what rule set you're using. If you got a bigger group, you have to say, guys, here's kind of the way the rules work. And when we get into an encounter, whether it's a role playing encounter with an NPC or combat, we got to kind of be mindful of keeping things moving along, or it'll take us 2 sessions to get through just one scene or one. So, and I try to do that is be mindful, not just of the rules that we're using, but the interaction of the group and sort of the flow of kind of, um, who's talking, who's engaged, who's not engaged. If someone seems disengaged, make sure and ask them a question. Make sure everybody has their turn to do something. Even if we're not in initiative, then I'll just go around the table, clockwise or counterclockwise. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What do you think? What do you want to do? I find where with small groups, what'll happen is the GM can kind of sit back and let the players, if there's 3 or 4 players, interact. They'll come up with a plan and tell you what they're going to do, or they're going to start asking you questions. With a larger group, there's a natural diffusion of responsibility, so they're not going to do that. They're going to be waiting for the next person to come up with an idea. You've got to, at least my experience as a DM, you have to say, what do you guys want to do? What give me some of the things you're thinking about. And just getting them to kind of make a decision when there's a larger group. So applying enough time pressure that they stay engaged and have to do something, but not being so strict that you can't let them kind of have room to breathe and be comfortable. That makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. That's good. All
And
right.
honestly, I've got 12 kids in this group, but there's only
Wow.
I don't think there's been a time where all 12 of them have been there, because we started with 10 and then 2 more joined, but nobody's ever all there. So it's
But
really been
you
more.
still got like eight
I
to
would say like
10,
there's
right?
eight core players and then 4 that kind of come in and out here and there.
Eight's still big.
Yeah. But yeah, well, usually have nine or 10 people there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, BJ. It was great to talk to you and get
Yeah.
some advice on big groups and how to run it. I guess it's really about being calm, managing, you know, the
And,
action and the flow of
and
the game, and
I,
having a good system.
yeah, I would say one other thing, sorry to interrupt your wrap up, but I think one thing that can potentially kill a large group is a rules lawyer.
Okay.
Now, they're good rules lawyers, which I would prefer to call them the rules parliamentarian. And they're the people who are happy to help the GM look up rules to make the game go faster. And then there's the people who just want to argue all the time.
Mm,
That's bad enough when there's 3 or 4 people, but when you got like 10, 12 people who are there to have a good
yeah.
time, you can't have someone doing that. So you either got to exclude those people or nip it real quick and get into a norm of the group that we're not going to do this. I haven't had anybody do that really in a long since, you know,
Yeah.
25
Maybe
years
that'll be our
last
next,
time I had
maybe that'll
anybody
be
do
our
that.
next topic, Dr. Boyd.
Kill all the rules lawyers.
No. No, what can disrupt a game?
Yeah.
What types of players or what types of GMs can disrupt a game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, BJ, for joining me on the GMologist Presents.
Good to
It's
be
always
here.
fun to have you in the games. I'm glad you will be able to play in my birthday game. So
Yeah.
so yeah, it'll be really fun. And I finally figured out what I'm going to run, but that'll be the next podcast. I don't know if this will come out at the same time, but we'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Thanks so much, BJ. Good night and good rolling.